From Hollywood, formerly Boston, but no one's keeping score. Late Night Coaching, starring the guy who left for lunch one day, never to return to work, Joe Tall.
Welcome to this track. This is Joe Tall. Another episode of Late Night Coaching where I bring guest coach Oink, whose real name is Peter. Peter, are you there?
Yeah, hi guys.
And I have one of my students with me, Thomas. He's also Deuce Crackmeyer. Thomas, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
And
What's up, guys?
You guys both are in Central European time. Peter, where are you located?
I'm in Copenhagen, Denmark.
And Thomas, you're in
Hungary.
You're in Hungary. So we got a little European connection here. We actually, all these hands are from On Game Network, which I believe is not open to U.S. players. Is that correct, Thomas?
Yeah, that's right.
And so we've got it's not too often we get too many. We're trying to expand our European videos and markets. So, and Oink, you're a full-time player at Limit Holdem, correct?
I'm a full-time player, yeah, but I do try to play other stuff than Limit Hold'em, but it's my main game, definitely.
Now, you get to still play on Party and all the other sites, and are the games still good?
I mean, I don't think they're much better than at Stars and in Full Tilt, but there's not any additional fish in my opinion, but the regular players may be a little bit worse. There's fewer 2+2s.
It's funny, I was talking to Death Donkey the other day, and I've actually drifted back into playing some straight Limit Hold'em. Just like 1530 on Full Tilt and things like that, and I'm finding really good games. And I was talking to Chris, and we came to the agreement that it seems like a lot of the tight aggressive 2+2 like players have kind of left Limit Hold'em for dead and have moved on to other things. And it seems like the games have kind of been pretty good. I'm talking like the last month or so, couple months. And I've just been kind of flirting back into the old world of Limit Hold'em, and it's been pretty fun. So, but we have about a dozen hands here. Hopefully we can get through a good chunk of them. Are you guys ready to go?
Yep.
And
yeah, let's do it.
We'll get started here. This is 10-20 on Poker Room, right, Thomas?
Yeah, that's right.
And
10-20.
We're playing short-handed. And I know you do have reads, but when we get to the opponent. So folded to you and you open completely standard, and you get called by the big blind. I suppose we'll start here. Do you have a read on the big blind before we see a flop?
Specialized. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see him. He's VP of 42, pre-flop raise 27, and aggression factor of 1.9. I think he's a good leg. And one little note that he's a little too fit fold like on the most flops.
So that's a pretty wide opening range. I mean, if he's a good lag, he's a real good one because he seems to be a little bit loose. Although, Oink, when you're playing?
Okay,
Okay, hold on one. Oink, at 6-handed or less, what is your VPIP?
I think it's probably 5 max, all those hands for specialized.
Oh.
So it's probably not that lag.
Okay.
I think if it was 6 max, he would probably be closer to, 35-25, which is more, let's say, accepted. So yeah.
Were you going to say?
Call this guy a lag tag.
Is that what you're going to say, Thomas? Are these all 5 max?
Yeah,
max
exactly that. Exactly, that's what I wanted to say. That the short-handed games at the Poker Room Network, they are five-handed.
Well, that's pretty interesting. We don't have that. I don't see that much. I mean, granted, I play in a lot of, you can play in a lot of 5-handed games, but they're usually games that end up 6-handed eventually. So that's actually pretty interesting. I kind of like that. That shows for a lot of action, I would think. So, well, on to you here, and you flop a pretty tight spot. Feels like a hand you want to continue with, but you get donked into. And I'll go to Oink right away. Like, how do you feel like when a player with that type of stat range donks into you on this type of flop?
I feel like my hand is no good, to be honest. I'm just gonna be start off by saying something surprising for me. I think it's okay to fold here. I just don't think he's donking a naked jack, and in his defense range against the cutoff steel, there aren't a lot of naked jacks. So he can have someone like probably not ace jack. If he has king jack, he obviously got a speed, and then there's like jack, maybe jack 7, jack 6, jack 5. There's not a lot of those hands in his range pre-flop. So when he dunks here, I think he pretty much has a made hand. A large portion of the time he will have a made hand here, maybe some flush draws. So I to be honest, I don't think folding here is that bad.
I'm gonna have to agree with you. I mean, we are heads up with the big blind, and I guess our only hope would be that he has some kind of flush draw, and to continue here. Thomas, how did you feel about the hand in this situation?
That's interesting, because now I feel kind of the same as you just mentioned, that the reverse implied odds are just too high, even if my hand is good. But at that moment, I put him on a really wide range, like any pair, any jack, many kings, any 4 flush. So that's why I decided, and the pot odds. That's why I decided to call and take 1 card off.
So you end up with an interesting turn. I guess here you'd like to see it get checked through. It does check, and I assume you check behind, and that's exactly what happened. So now here we are on the river, and we spike the ace, and our opponent leads out. I assume there is no reason to raise, but we can't fold here, can we, Peter?
No, we can never fold. And I would like to say about the turn, I think when he checks the turn, he's either screw playing us with some monster, or he does actually have a draw. I don't think betting the turn is bad, to be honest. Because if he has a draw, if he has something like a flush draw or naked jack, and we check behind this turn, then our hand looks exactly what it is, ace high. And so he's not going to be bluffing the river very often. So if we want to bet from flush draws and naked jacks, we should do it on the turn. And if we do intend to call a river bet, if we check the turn on say a deuce or a tray or something like that, then we might as well get the bet in on the turn to actually charge the draws that I don't think will bluff the river very often. So I think we should bet the turn. And if we get to the river, I think the river is a no-brainer call. No way we can fold. No way. I mean, it doesn't help any of his draws, really. And he could easily be making a stupid bet with a queen or a 10 here. So, yeah, definite call.
Are you snap folding to turn check raise?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I can see that. Yeah. It's a pretty interesting point. So, on to the river, and we do call, and we end up with the same hand. I guess that's not going to happen too often, so we don't have to worry about it. But that's a pretty interesting point, Peter. I like your line on the turn, and I think you're right. He either, there might actually, against the type of hand he had, there actually might be a slight chance that he folds that type of hand on the turn here. Actually, he would have to almost have the exact hand he had to play it like that, I guess. But do you have any further questions, Thomas, about the hand?
No, that's perfect.
Okay. I guess we'll keep moving along. And here we have 6-3 suited in the big blind, and it's folded to the cutoff who open limps. And the small blind raises out. Do you have a read on 58027, Thomas?
Yeah, I have some stats. He's 57, 37, 2.4, so he's pretty
loose
nuts.
aggressive. I'll go to Oink. Oink, what's the lowest suited gapped type hand like this that you would defend with? Are you even defending here? So what is your range defending in this situation, Peter?
Any two suited. So definitely calling this one. My thinking here is that, well, I got good odds getting about 5-1 because the open limp is going to be limp re-raising very rarely. So getting 5-1 here, 6-3 suited is definitely good enough. I'd also be calling 3 deuce suited, 7 deuce suited, 6-5 offsuit, I suppose. And we got good position, relative position post flop because we can protect our hand when the small blind continuation bets most flops.
Yeah, it's a really loose range. I'm definitely defending with 6-3 suited here. It's not my style, and there's definitely nothing wrong with it. It's a little higher variance style to defend with the 7 deuce, things like that. But like I will defend with anything I can make a straight flush with that's not hugely gapped. I'm not that big a fan of the Peter Russ any two suited in this exact situation. I'd rather have Alfspar raise in the small blind call. And I kind of I like that type of relative position better. And does that make any more sense? Am I weak tight there, Peter? Or
I always think you're weak tight, Joe. So
okay. So I mean, I'm pretty loose though. I play pretty loose, aggressive, short-handed lemon hold'em, but I might not show it when I teach in my videos and stuff, but I do. So Thomas calls like we all would, and I hope everybody that's listening would. And we get a flop that's kind of junky for us. I mean, we did flop a pair, and a pair is the nuts and hold'em, but there happens to be ace on the board, and we're in a multi-way hand. Our small blind does lead into us. How do we stand here against this loose aggressive opponent, Peter?
Not great, but I'm not ready to fold just yet. I think, it would be natural for most aggressive players to be thinking in terms of protecting their hand on this flop, but I think 2 points needs to be made about that. First of all, we don't always have a hand worth protecting. So whenever we're behind, we don't want to protect our hand. Whenever we're behind, we want the third guy to come along to increase our implied odds for when we spike a 3 or 6. And when we do actually have the best hand, it's quite doubtful that the open limper is going to have a lot of hands in his range that he's going to call 1 bet with, but fold 2. I think on this particular flop, he's going to let go of Jack 10, Queen Jack, or whatever for 1 bet. So it's pretty much just 6-5, 5-4, gut shot hands that we can actually protect our hand against. So I think it's quite the parlay that we actually have the best hand and that the open limper behind us has a gut shot that he's going to be folding for 2 bets, but call for 1 bet. So I think calling here is by far the best play.
Okay, and Thomas does call. Thomas, was that your kind of line of thinking, or is this your typical defending range? And how loose do you get in your small blind here? Do you have a similar range to Oinks, or are you weak tight like me?
I'm kind of tighter, I think. In this case, I would say I play like kind of way ahead or way behind. I have this thinking, but definitely if the open limper Alpersar calls or raises, I have to reevaluate and think about my hand as no longer being the best hand.
Okay, I agree. So, okay, we end up heads up on the turn, which is pretty much a blank, and our opponent leads again, and we're getting 5-1 here, Peter. Can we give him enough credit to be done with it now? Or I assume if we're calling here, we're probably seeing a showdown, and I can't think of any other line that I would. But I'm sure you can enlighten me if you have something else to say.
I think it's real difficult to call here and then intend to fold to a river bet, because if he's loose enough to second barrel with queen, jack, king, queen, or big card type hands that he raised with pre-flop, he's probably also loose enough to fire 3 with them. So for me, I think we're getting about 5-1, right? So we're getting about 6-2 on a call down. I mean, are we good? 25%. We're gonna improve against Ace X with like 10% probability. So
it's pretty close.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close. Yeah, and I think if I'm playing like 4 or 5 tables, I'm just calling down because I don't have the brain capacity to really analyze it. But I think it's close. I don't think folding here is a bad play at all.
Okay, and Thomas, you did call down, and we did get pretty much a river blank. And
I didn't.
I mean, you called the turn, and then you ended up on the river, which actually filled in the diamond draw. So it does complete a percentage of his range that he would bet the river with. But I think I'm going to agree with Oink here that if you do call the turn, we should probably see the showdown regardless of the river card. Oink?
Yeah, I think this is a double-edged sword, this river, because, it does complete some of his draws, obviously, and it does complete some of our draws, but he should probably also realize that we don't always have a diamond draw here, because we probably would have made a play with a diamond draw earlier. So I think it's kind of a scare card, and when people 3-barrel scare cards, I tend to just make loose calls, because scare cards tend to polarize most people's betting ranges between really strong hands and complete bluffs, and the marginal hands then they will try to check call because they don't want to get raised. So if you call the turn, I think you got to call this river.
Okay, Thomas,
it feels extremely dirty.
Yeah, definitely. And that's limit hold'em. I mean, it's squeaking your head through like these teeny little equity holes and trying to sneak by. Like, I'm willing to say that my folds of 7-2 suited kind of have like almost just a pure. My swings are just a little bit less. Like I don't really think I could how much more earned there would be. It's limit hold'em, so it's just one of those things. So. Thomas, you elected to fold here. What were your thought process on the river? Kind of like he couldn't bet anything on the river because of the diamond draw came, and so that shifted your thought process more towards he's not bluffing.
Yeah, that was one part of my thinking. The other thing was that in my experience at these limits, at that particular network. They don't really triple barrel really much. So, and probably I also overestimated the chance of him having a diamond draw and filling in on the river, and that's why I elected to fold.
I never make a flush, so I never give anybody credit for a flush. So. So when the only reason why I would fold is because I would think that he might give me credit for a flush draw. So he's definitely like going to value bet like a pretty strong ace hand, and so I. So I could see like. Now I'll be honest, I'm probably weak tight and would have folded the turn. So,
I see.
I did say if I call the turn, I do call the river. But the thing is, I didn't say I probably fold the turn. So let's move on to the next hand. But pretty interesting hands you brought up here. So now we got like the nuts and the big blind, King 10 suited, and it's folded to the small blind, who opens, and his name is Looser. And do you have a read on him?
Yeah, let's see him. His VPIP is 52, preflop raise 8, and aggression factor of 0.9, another loose passive one.
Quite.
That's basically the read.
I'm going to go to Oink here. Peter, do you always 3-bet a hand like this? Are you just calling sometimes? And if you are doing either, what are the situations you're looking for?
Well, obviously, I'm never folding.
I didn't give you that.
I sometimes 3-bet, and I sometimes call.
Yeah.
Against a guy like this. So could you repeat his preflop stats again?
52, 8, 0.9. But I think I didn't know him, so he was kind of unknown when we played that hand.
Okay, so let's consider him an unknown.
Okay.
I think against an unknown, I would 3-bet. If I had known his preflop stats were 50/8, I think calling is okay, because I mean, but it's tricky. A lot of these bad players, when they're getting the small blind, and obviously if you seat select well, you'll experience this a lot because you have immediate position on the fish. So when it's folded to them in the small blind, I mean, sometimes 40/5 guys will be open raising any two against me, and I'm like, what the beep is going on, and I don't understand it. And then you adjust and start 3-betting, and then they start open limping. And I mean, I think often these fish will be kind of erratic pre-flop. So, I mean, I'm not ready to give him credit for a really tight range pre-flop. But that said, if all I know is that he's a 58 guy, then I'm just calling. If he's an unknown, I'm definitely 3-betting. If he's a good lag tag, a good hand reader who's not going to be letting go of good kings and ace high very often post-flop, then I don't think there's much of any reason to 3-bet pre-flop. Then I like just calling pre-flop and then doing a whole lot of calling post-flop with the intention of showing down a fair amount. I mean, if I hit a pair or better, I'm showing down close to 100%, and if the flop comes off something like deuce 7, I'm probably seeing a showdown, close to 100% as well. So my plan here against good players would be to call. Against bad players, mostly 3-bet unless their range is tight. Against bad players with a tight range, just call and try to improve on the flop.
What is your 100% 3-bet hand? Is it King Queen suited? Is it King Jack? Or are you just waiting for your? Or are you just 100% like with Ace Jack plus?
7-5 suited of spades because it makes most flushes. But on a serious note, though, I don't think I have any hand in the big blind that I 3-bet 100%. I mean, I'm calling all hands with some frequency, even aces and kings.
Out of pure balance, yeah, I like that a lot, especially in today's game. So, Thomas did elect to 3-bet here and a call, so we got a bit of a bloated pot heads up, and we flop a gut shot with a runner and an overcard and a middle possible pair. This is like one of those spots in Limit Hold'em where you either flop the near nuts or you flop the nothing. So our opponent checks, and I'm going to say standard continuation bet here. Right, Peter? Is there any time you do ever check through? And how is your flop aggression in general, like heads up in these situations?
So I'm basically always c-betting this flop. And
always.
I don't think there's any reason not to c-bet this flop. I mean, we're still treating this guy as an unknown, right? Even though he turned up as a loose passive, but against an unknown, I'm c-betting here.
Okay. So you did bet here, and you are called, and we turn a diamond draw, and that's a pretty good card for us. But I assume against an opponent like this, he's going to take a passive line and probably call a lot of his pairs on the flop. He might even call a lot of his weak jacks. I'm not out of line saying that, right, Peter?
I'd expect him to place a fair amount. jacks.
Yeah, I mean, we've
And,
got a passive opponent here, though.
Yeah, okay, but I think well, at least I'm treating this guy as an unknown because I think it was unknown to Thomas at the time, right? So, I mean, I think we need to discount his Jack X hands in his range, and to a lesser extent 9X. I think when people check call flops against me, flops like this, I'm into. I mean, just by default, I'm putting them on ace high, 6X, small pocket pairs, weak draws like. What's a weak draw here? 7-5 is a weak draw, right? Stuff like that. King X with a backdoor flush draw, stuff like that. But and of course the odd check call check raise with the hand of Jack X, 2-pair sets when people elect to check call and then go for turn check raise with those kind of hands. But I think those needs to be discounted a fair bit. So basically, after the flop action, my thinking would be, okay, so this guy got 6X or ace high or a pair of fives or a pair of sevens or something like that, and he really wants to see a showdown, and I'm not really expecting to get a better hand to fold that often. I think on that specific turn, we may get ace deuce, ace tray, ace four to fold, but I don't think we get better kings to fold, and I think a lot of the better aces aren't going to fold either. Stuff like ace seven, ace eight, I don't think it folds. So I do believe that we have a hand. We want to show down also because I think we do beat some hands like 7-5 that I mentioned before. We also beat stuff like 8-7 if 8-7 chooses to play passive here, queen 10 or queen 8. Stuff like that, if he peels king 7. So if we do check the turn, we need to call some river bets because we need to call most rivers actually if he bets, because when we do check otherwise and then fold the river, we give up on that equity against worse hands. So the choice on the turn, in my opinion, is between betting and then making a decision whether we should try and bluff the river unimproved, and checking behind to try and induce a bluff and avoid getting check raised.
Wow. Okay. So, in a nutshell, you more often check.
I wasn't saying that, but I think. Yeah, I probably check more often than not because my thinking is I have showdown value. I want to see a showdown. I don't particularly want to be check raised. And because I have the flush draw, the diamond draw, I'm not really that scared because if he doesn't have diamonds in his hands and I'm ahead, say he doesn't have that many outs. If he has a gut shot and pair outs, something like 7-5 without a diamond here will have for 7 outs, right? And handing out free cards to 7 outs. I'm not that worried about that because those hands are probably going to be putting in a bet on the river unimproved if I check behind as a bluff. At least sometimes, right? So, yeah, that would be my thinking. Yeah. I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah. I said wow as in like, wow, that makes a ton of sense. Thomas, you elected to bet here. And can I ask, what was your reasoning at this point?
First, I think I was on what I call a hope mode. I was hoping that he could fold some weak ace highs, even some weak pocket pairs.
Or 6.
6 probably not. And the other thing, I think it was the first session that I played against this guy. That's why I didn't want to kind of emphasize the stats that I had on him. But I noticed that he's a passive player. I mean, he called much and did some things like not value betting the river in a kind of easy spot. And I thought that it was really unlikely that he would check raise me, and I was trying to put a bet in here if I put in one bet on the turn and the river. And if I improve, I'm putting in another bet. If not, I'm probably checking behind and just kind of giving up.
Okay, he check calls here, and we see a river of the ace of spades of all cards. And he checks again. Peter, is there any merit at all to barrel here again? Or is that just like such the scare card type tactic? No one ever folds.
6-1 on a bluff, and he could have king queen here, which he check folds. So I think he definitely check folds king queen. I think we may get him to fold check fold 6x, low pairs,
Queen, low pairs, yeah.
Yeah, fives, fours, if he made it to the river with those hands. Again, thinking he's an unknown, but just king queen is. I think king queen makes a lot of sense for him here. If we think the hand through, pre-flop king queen is standard. He gets 3-bet with king queen. The flop comes and he gives him 2 overcards and a gut shot. He may elect to check raise the flop with that hand, but check calling it because he has showdown value makes a lot of sense. Check calling again on the turn makes a lot of sense. So I think king queen is one of those hands that we can't discount that often. So there's 12 combos left of king queen, and so I mean, if we add in a few small pocket pairs that he folds, and getting 6-1, I think we'll have a hard time finding. Let's say he has 15 combinations he folds here, so we should find 75 combinations of hands that he calls. Yeah, okay. So thinking about it now that I'm talking to myself a little bit here, maybe it's not that easy a bluff, but 6-1. Yeah. So if he folds 15 combination of better hands, he just needs to call with less than. Oh, maybe I'm getting the math wrong now. I'm rambling. I don't think firing a third belt is bad.
Okay. Thomas did elect to check, and he had one of those hands that he possibly might have gone away from on the river, maybe. Not to be completely results oriented, but he had pocket fives. So, but that kind of fits in that same category as king queen, obviously. But it's an interesting spot either way. I mean, especially when you pick up all those outs on the turn. And I'm kind of in Peter's book, and I love Peter's breakdown of how I actually do end up with some showdown value. And I probably do end up checking that turn. So I probably check the turn with a lot of hands there. So, yeah, so pretty interesting spot. Thomas, do you have any comments you want to make?
No, I think that's all.
Okay, and Peter?
Yeah, I just want to say that if we check turn and then this specific river card comes off and he fires a bet, I'm absolutely insta-calling. I just want to make that point. So I wouldn't let that card scare me into then deciding to fold the river.
Yeah, I'm probably calling too.
Okay, so moving along to the next hand, we're four-handed, and the button opens, and we have ace-10 offsuit in the small blind. Now, Peter, I'm going to tell you this. I've actually recently been experimenting with just calling in the small blind here with hands like ace-10 offsuit, king-jack offsuit, king-queen offsuit against button steals. Because of how common it is for people just to snap 3-bet hands like that. I'm also calling with a lot of baby pocket pairs and hands like that, where like pocket fours, where I can play good flops, trying to protect my hand with the button being to my right and being the aggressor, because I'm basically opening an invitation to the big blind. Am I completely out of my mind taking a line like that in today's games, or do I have a little bit of merit there?
I think it does have some merit. I think, but I got to be honest with you. I think ace-10 offsuit is a bad candidate, and I think king-jack offsuit is a bad candidate as well. I mean, most times people are going to have plus 40% on the button. 55%, 50%, and that includes hands like 7-6 offsuit. ace-5 suited, stuff like that. 8-5 suited, not ace-5 suited. 8-5 suited and pair of deuces. So I think not 3-betting with ace-10 is giving up value. And it's also not a hand that particularly enjoys playing multi-way. But I think cold calling in the small blind second and after a button raise, I think that's fine. But I would tend to do it a lot when the button is very showdown bound. So say you got some very strong lag tag who opens on the button and you got 10-9 suited in the small blind. You have tremendous equity against this range because he's playing so many hands, but you don't have that much folding equity. So I think just cold calling, especially if the big blind is loose as well, or if the big blind is really good, I think cold calling has a lot of merit, but I wouldn't do it with ace-10 offsuit and king-jack offsuit. I would do it with pair 4s, pair 5s, as you mentioned, 10-9 suited.
And queen.
Yeah, stuff
suited.
like that.
Queen,
but
yeah.
Excuse me?
Queen-jack suited.
Too good, I think, not to 3-bet. But,
okay.
If you know what I'm saying, hands that aren't good enough to 3-bet. But then also you have to mix it up. So I think once in a while also cold calling with a pair of 9s, with a pair of aces, with ace-king, to mix it up to balance your range. But the simple idea of cold calling second in to a button steal in the small blind, I don't hate that as much as a lot
in
of
today's games.
Yeah. Because the ranges are so wide that you need to play a lot of hands yourself, and if you got to 3-bet all those hands, you're gonna get yourself in a lot of ugly spots post flop, especially if the big blind is good as well.
Yeah, out of position in the bloated pot.
Yeah.
I also found that it absolutely torches the button stealer. Like after a little while, he's just like, God, like quit calling out of small. You can just sense it. Like it folds to them, and suddenly they're timing out. Like, what should I do? I have a hand that I'm not sure if I want to be raising or not because the small blinds drive me insane. So I've been kind of doing that. Like, and I have been adjusting it too. As the session moves along, and they make certain adjustments too. So I find it to be a kind of make some metagame type situation set up for later hands in the session. So, have any more comments about anything like that?
Yeah, I think also for a guy like you who's so good, who plays live a lot and plays other games a lot, you're so good at adjusting and to observe how other people view you. You're very much in touch with your image, and you're very good to exploiting your image. So I think for a guy like you, it's a hell of a lot more easier to start using a style where you just cold call like 40% of your hands against the button steal, and then start adjusting and then start tweaking your ranges a little bit to take advantage of that image that you got. And I also wanted to point out that in a thread recently at 2+2 at the mid-high stakes forum, I think Death Donkey advocated cold calling something like 40 to 50% of his hands, or at least playing 40 to 50% of his hands in the small blind against the button steal when it's 3-handed. And I'm pretty sure that he didn't mean to 3-bet all of those hands. So, I mean, it's definitely not something that, there's other good players here who would start cold calling. But as a default, if you don't know what you're doing in this spot, 3-bet or fold. But it's very important to realize when you can start cold calling and what kind of hands you can start doing it with.
Okay. And Thomas does 3-bet here, which I assume is I'll just ask straight out. Have you ever considered that type of calling range type play that I was just talking about, Thomas, out of the small blind?
Actually, I was thinking about it for a while, but definitely not with the ace-10 kind of hand.
Okay. I understand the raise of ace-10 here for sure. I mean, I don't always do it. I definitely still 3-bet a lot of hands out of the small blind too. Do you have anything else about that?
I think I sometimes cold call with some hands like suited connectors or like small to mid pocket pairs. But when I'm cold calling, I'm more concerned about the big blind than the possible steal raiser and if he's kind of tight, I'm much more often cold calling in the small blind. If he's kind of loose, I almost never do that. I just 3-bet or fold.
Okay. So you do 3-bet here, and the big blind does go away, and the button caps it. That's another point, Peter, is that like I've noticed a lot of people open up their like, oh geez, I have position capping it ranges. They're really, really wide nowadays. I've seen it even drift into live poker games here in California, where I'm like, wow, he just capped that button heads up with King 10. Like, what was that? Like, okay,
Yeah, pair of fours,
pair of fours,
yeah.
things like that. Yeah, you didn't see a couple of years ago, like almost never. But it's definitely come into play a lot more. So he does cap it here, and I guess not sure if you had a read on that player, Thomas, to add, but
No, he was totally unknown.
Okay.
I look it up in the poker tracker, but I think that's the only session I played against him. So he was kind of unknown.
Okay, and now we get a bit of a bloated pot, and it comes down 4-7 queen with the 2 low spades, and we do have the ace of spades, and he bets. Peter, we just peel. I mean, I don't see anything else we can do here, can we?
No, I think check call is just miles ahead of both check fold and check raise in this spot.
Yeah, it's pretty standard, and and that's what Thomas does. We pick up a pretty nice card to draw, considering we have the ace of spades, and I assume same thing, check call, right, Peter?
I mean, I
against an unknown.
So he's unknown. Okay, yeah. I keep complaining about people who make stupid semi bluffs against me on the turn when I'm never folding, but I think one thing that's worth mentioning here that is good for us is that the turn brings out a straight draw. I mean, we don't have a straight draw, but we would have a straight draw if we had something like 10-9, Jack 10, stuff like that, Jack 9 suited. And in the heat of the moment, he may not realize that we probably wouldn't be 3-betting 10-9 offsuit pre-flop, but he would definitely, if we check raise this turn, he would definitely think that we could have something like 10-9, Jack 9. And so any 5, any 6, any 9 may actually get him to fold ace king on the river, or ace jack, or stuff like that. So to be honest, I don't think that check raising this turn is completely retarded, also because the pot is rather bloated because of the pre-flop cap. And also, as you mentioned, Joe, people are just capping left and right.
They're just capping position is what they're capping. I mean,
and I think they're correct to do so. If they want to cap good hands, I mean, either you should, our villain in this spot should pre-flop either take a line that's not capping at all or capping a shitload, to pardon my French. And so, so I don't think it's bad for them to do it, but because ranges, I mean, his capping range here isn't 9s and ace queen. Yeah, I mean, it's possibly 3s, 10-9 suited, Jack 10, stuff like that. And if we don't intend to check call down this turn from this spot on, which I don't think we can, but I'm not sure, then there's also the merit of a turn check raise that it will get him to fold hands on the river that we would have check folded to. So say he has something like Jack 10 suited, and we check call, and then we check fold a blank river, then we give up the best hand. But if we make a semi bluff here and then fire a bell on any river, then he's going to be folding that Jack 10 hand that he would have gotten us to fold with. And that's actually quite huge. So there is some reverse implied folding equity in this spot for us, because if we're going to check call, check fold, we're going to be folding some equity on the river, and making a semi-bluff check raise here will prevent that. So there's two sides of a semi-bluff here.
Okay. And Thomas, you check called, which is totally fine. And you whiff the river, and the river comes king. Do we have any showdown value left here, Peter? With the King of Hearts on the river.
Yeah, if he's 3-barreling Jack 10, but I mean he needs to have those kind of hands in his carrying range. So I think, if Thomas check folded this one, it would probably be the way I played it. But I think this is a very interesting hand, and if you end up doing some math on this, I think we're gonna. It's just such a tough spot, and it's probably the reason why you should call pre-flop. I don't know.
Wow.
I'm sorry for it. I check fold here as well, but I feel like I'm getting owned tons.
I'm 8.5 to 1.
Yeah, and it's Jack 10 and worse aces, right?
Yeah, it's small.
Yeah.
So
10-9.
Plus, yeah, is there any chance he folds anything if we were to bet out? I mean, that's one of those considerations. Like if I had ace king here or something, or if I hit the king, I'd just lead out probably. So like that's how I think of that. So like if I am gonna do anything here, and I think my hand is plus, if it does have showdown value, do I also can combine that? I don't know. So do you have a comment about that?
Yeah, if I bet out ace king on this flop, I'm getting called by ace jack. So by the same reasoning, I'm not betting out to get better hands to fold.
Okay. That makes a ton of sense. Yeah. So, all right, Thomas, do you have any comments about or questions?
No, that's great what I heard. I'm like drinking your words. Is there any expression like that in English?
It's getting drunk on the language. I've learned a ton already. So I love the way Peter thinks about poker.
Yeah.
I definitely have a different style. So obviously adding those styles, all those little things you can take from somebody like Peter, something like Death Donkey, from something like Entity, from something like Danza Smack in Limit Hold'em, because it's such like a dynamic variant game. We all kind of just squeak along the line of EV and all these tight situations. There's so many hands that you didn't bring us, Thomas, that we all play the same because that's Limit Hold'em. And unfortunately, that's what the rest of the world thinks about Limit Hold'em.
That's exactly what I heard.
These are the ones that we can debate all day, like squeezing our head through these teeny little equity holes. It's like trying to like these little teeny spots skirting across the edges and stuff like that. So that make it so dynamic. So, but I digress. So we'll move along here. Button open raise, and we have ace jack suited in the big blind. And I'm going to say right back to like kind of in that same world, I don't always 3-bet this. I don't always 3-bet this. I don't feel like I'm always losing value either. How do you feel about that, Peter?
It depends on the button, of course. But say that the button is a regular player and your game's a good player, then I think your strategy here should be just like with cabbing before in position. You need to balance. You need to consider your strategy here with all your hands. And I think you either 3-bet a tons or you don't 3-bet at all.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I probably 3-bet here most of the time. So
there's some mighty good players out there who advocates not 3-betting any hand in that spot against a good player. I want to say against bad players, I'm just playing an exploitable style, and I'm not thinking about balance whatsoever. So it's against good players that you need to think about balance and not being too exploitable.
Interesting. Thomas does 3-bet. We get a flop of 10-5-4 rainbow with our. I always love having the option of backdooring a flush draw. And seriously, like look at it. Just 10-5-4 rainbow here. A pretty dry flop, but make the 5 a spade, and I just feel totally different about the hand. I just like, oh, I got no chance to make my flush, you know. I like having that little chance. So, uh, and totally standard continuation bet. I would think we'll just head to the turn. So Thomas bets and our opponent calls, and the turn is a total brick, which is gives us the gut shot. So we have a 2, 4, 5, 10 board, which is extremely dry, and we did not get raised on the flop. We still have value in this hand to bet again, don't we, Peter?
The way I'm thinking about it here is that we still have enough equity to fight for the pot. So my thinking here is I prefer to show down. And I want to get showdown in some way. My thinking is also, if I'm up against something like 10x or 5x, if I check, he's going to bet. And if I bet, and let's assume that he's a passive player, he's going to call those hands. Let's say 5x, 4x, other ace highs. If I think he's going to bet those hands if I check. Okay, I'm rambling a little bit here. So the important thing to realize here is against a player this spot who's going to bet a lot if you check to him. It's just fine to check call. Against a player who's going to be playing good and going to know when to check behind, good players here will realize that when you check this turn, you got big cards, ace jack, ace queen, ace nine, good kings, and they will check behind their 8-7 hand or whatever they picked up hard draw. They're not going to bet it for you. So against good players, I'm going to bet here, and if they raise me, I'm just going to hate life and call, and I'm probably going to spite call the river as well because I don't want to get bluffed off the best hand. But against a bad player, I think just check calling is the play. A bad player is going to bet when check to. And luckily in mid stakes, the bad players tend to be 40/15 guys who don't know any better, and they just bet when it's checked to them. So,
okay, I can't see that now. Would it make any difference, like say the board paired like a 4?
I'd consider that slightly bad for me because when people peel this flop, they do have a fair amount. But it's such a peel-friendly flop here, and I think that should also enter the equation. He's peeling pretty much any hand that he raises pre-flop with and just calls our raise with. So his range on the turn is pretty wide, and we do have the best hand a lot. We have a lot of equity on this flop. On this turn, and that's why I want to show down. I want to fight for this pot. I don't have any hopes of him folding a better hand to a turn bet. It's just a matter of me thinking if I check, am I going to hand out a free card, or if I check, will he bet worse hands for me? And that's going to be what decides whether I check call or bet call. I'm never ever bet folding here. I think that would be awful with the picked up gut shot.
I agree with you there. Yeah, no doubt about that. So Thomas does bet and we get raised, which is the situation we sort of wanted to avoid, and we get to the river, which is a doesn't help our hand whatsoever. It's the 9 of clubs, and he checks through with ace 6. Maybe I went a little too fast. No, I didn't go too fast. So you bet and got called, and yeah, you checked through. Are people still using that free showdown raise play like this or what was that type? I mean, you guys, Thomas, you got a question or a point to make on here?
Yeah, I think it wasn't a free showdown raise. I think he really thought that it was a semi-bluff, clearly, but he thought that if I'm not folding the turn, I'm probably not folding that river also. And I agree with Peter, what he just said, that my approach to this hand is like totally different, where we had ace high also in the previous ace 10 hand, but the flop texture and the things, especially the reads that I have on my opponent, they make it totally different hand. And I just really want to show down.
Yeah. you really want to show down on the turn. You have the best hand a lot. To your question, Joe, I do see stupid plays like this with a6. I see it from regular players who seems to be winning. Not as much anymore though, but I think it was after Stark's book came out, everybody was just crazy about the free showdown play. He advocates it and uses it a fair amount. I gotta say I disagree with him.
I do too. I have for many years, and it just doesn't make any sense here. A6, just call. I mean,
he has the world's easiest call.
Yeah,
and if he does raise, it's actually for value. I mean, in some sick twisted world.
I actually got into a debate in the small stakes forum a couple of months ago where someone was misapplying the free showdown raise type play, and it was defended by Nick, who I know personally. And I pretty much said, like, at these stakes in these games, if there's a hand you can raise the turn, you should be betting the river. And I was like, it's clearer. Like, that's it. Like, and I just, it kind of ended the thread, to be honest. So that's kind of how I feel like that. But Thomas, you have any last questions before we move on to the probably the last hand, because we're running a little late on time?
Let's say I bet the turn, which I think we can agree it's the best way to play the turn, and he calls. And what's our plan for the river? Because I think I sometimes feel like totally lost when I play those hands, those ace high type of hands on the river.
Peter?
I think, say he had just called the turn and the river came off 9 as here. This would be a very thin value bet. He probably needs to call with the king queen a fair amount to make it a plus EV value bet, or he needs to be raising very often with pairs early in the hand. So we need to discount 10x, 5x, 4x pocket pairs a lot in order for us to make a value bet here. It's a close spot, and I wouldn't worry too much about being lost, Thomas, because I'm lost a lot as well. I think one thing that I want to mention here, I think people don't bet enough, and I think you need to bet ace high to have for balance. You need a pretty balanced range, and people don't bet enough here, which makes them easier to read, so that when they actually do 3-bell here, they either have a good pair that they feel is worth value betting, or they have something like queen jack and they're just making a desperation 3rd barrel to get king high and ace high to fold. So, I mean, value betting ace high is definitely something you need to consider, especially out of position, but also in position, to get that balanced river betting range. Say you had ace king in this spot, then I definitely value bet the river.
Yeah. Any last comments before we move on?
I also want to say about the free showdown race. Say the turn had been a 4 or a 5, and villain had a pair of trays or a pair of deuces in his hand, then I'd actually be free showdown racing in that spot. I think that's one of the few spots where you can make a free showdown race, is when you can actually get villain to fold, or hero in this spot, to fold over cards that has a lot of hidden outs. So say the board had paired and he had trays or deuces, then ace-jack would have something like 12 outs, right, or even more. And getting 12 outs to fold is definitely something that's good in a pot that size. So on paired boards with an underpair, that's basically the only spots where I'm ever free showdown racing.
Okay. Thomas?
That's great.
Okay.
Let's move on.
And we'll have time for one more hand here, and maybe 2. So open fold in the button 3-handed, we get pocket 9s, raised and called. We flop the set. Congratulations. And
thanks.
I just I have a kind of a couple of things when I play Limit Hold'em. I no one ever flops a flush. No one ever flops a set. And if there's a 2 flush on the flop, no one ever makes it on the river. So they make it on the turn though. So it's just one of those weird things. But it's funny because like I say those kind of funny things, but like if you think about it, like no one really does flop a flush, so you don't really have to worry about it. So I kind of think about poker differently in a little weird box that I live in. So we flop the stones here and bet and get raised. Peter, I'm a huge fan of fast playing. What is your line in this situation?
Fast playing. Fast playing, get him into 4-bet a flush draw, get him to 4-bet ace high, and then go for the turn check raise.
Yeah, I completely agree. Go ahead, Thomas.
I'm also a fan of fast playing here in this situation, especially out of position. But let's say we are in position and we flop a set, and let's say we raised, the big blind called, some ordinary things like that, and we flop a set, we make a bet, he check raises. I sometimes just call and raise the turn. Is that really considerable or opponent dependent, or how should I approach this?
I'd pretty much always 3-bet, hoping he 4-bets, so I can get to raise the turn. I mean, it's cool when you just call his check raise and you get to raise the turn, then you got multiple bets in on both flop and turn, right? But it's even cooler if you can get him to cap the flop and you can raise the turn. And he maybe even 3-bet the turn because he turned to the top 2 pair or whatever. I mean, just keeping the pedal to the middle will increase the probability that you actually get to cap both flop and turn. And that's when you make big money. That's when you get 4-bets in flop and turn. So, and you can't get 4-bets in on both flop and turn if you just call the flop check raise and then raise the turn.
And Thomas does stay on the gas, and our opponent calls the 3-bet, and now the turn's a flush draw, and we bet and are raised here. And it's funny because I just said my little adage. Sometimes they make it on the turn, but they don't make it on the river. I'll go to Peter.
So the turn's a diamond?
The turn's a diamond, and we're betting raised.
I just call down now. Of course, going for river check raise if I improve, or actually maybe trying to donk 3-bet if I improve on the river. But I just call now because I think when people raise me here, they gotta flush a lot. Because we're repping a really big hand on the flop, and basically what they're telling us now on the turn is, fuck you and your set, I got a flush. So I'm definitely just calling here. I think 3-betting is overplay.
Yeah. And Thomas does call, and you made quads on the river, Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
And that's pretty interesting. I know Peter just said, like, I'm a huge fan of donk 3-betting in a lot of situations. This is probably one of them.
Yeah. I think
go ahead.
Excuse me. On 2+2, tryptamine has a pretty good saying: if you can go for bet 3-bet, don't check raise.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, and I think this is a good spot. Also for another reason, actually, here. So the graphic is screwing up again. I can't see the exact turn, but if we do
deuce of diamonds.
It's a deuce. Okay, if we do bet here, we actually okay. So we can rep something like a naked ace X that thought it just counter faded a lower 2 pair, right? No, that can't.
Yeah, he could have turned ace deuce easily.
Well, yeah, he could have turned ace deuce. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So if we bet out here, we may look like ace king that now thought that don't want to have ace deuce checking behind, right? And then he may elect to raise ace 10. And if we can get him to raise ace 10 or flush here, then that's of course huge because then we get 3-bets in. So I think donk 3-betting is a play here.
Okay, Thomas?
Yeah. I think I I chose to check raise mainly because I saw so many times on this network and on most European-based, so non-US networks, that people just play limit hold'em so scared on the turn and the river that I saw so many times calling him, let's say, I bet here and he just calls with some 10 high, even jack high flush. I think. So I don't know what your experience is, because I think you play on the party poker, Peter, right? Mostly.
Yeah, I play on game as well. I think if he is the type of player who's gonna just call a flush here, but he's also gonna check it behind a fair amount, and then dunking does have the distinct advantage that it will get a bet in against the hands that will check behind, and ace deuce will, and he could easily have ace deuce in this spot, will probably also check behind a fair amount here. So donking will do that. One thing, though, about check raising is that if you check raise and he will 3-bet flushes or ace 10, and that's not something, I mean, that's not impossible. That would be completely retarded. I agree, but people will do that. And if he's overly aggressive, then check raising may actually get him to 3-bet, and then you can cap. But then on the other hand, if he's that type of player, then bet 3-betting will probably also have him capping anyways. So maybe there's not that much difference. But to be honest, I know what you're saying, that sometimes people will just call a flush here if you bet, but bet it and call a raise. But the times that we get him to raise a flush and get to 3-bet, that's pretty huge. Or the times he doesn't check behind ace deuce, that's pretty huge.
I understand.
Just keep making quads on the river. You're not gonna have to worry about then.
I'm gonna do that.
So we did get called, and he did turn a flush here, Peter. It's showdown of a queen 5 of diamonds. So we're over an hour now, guys. So we do have some hands left. I don't know if Peter, you'd be up for doing a second one of these at some time. When we all have time to.
We can do a second one, or we can also just continue on now. I don't have much of anything to do, so
Thomas?
It's up to you, Joe.
That would be great for me.
Okay, I will
Either one of them.
I will press on. I do have a little bit of time. I can use it. So we have ace 5 offsuit in the big blind here, and it's opened by the button, and there's the call by the small blind. And it's on to us now. Even I'm calling here, Peter. Do you believe that?
Yeah, I'm not.
Okay,
I'm not folding an ace. Getting 5 to 1. I'm not.
I know
folding.
you're not.
Yeah.
I said me.
I think if you want to fold an ace here, I think ace 5 wouldn't be it. I think ace 6, ace 7.
Ace 6, yeah. And I was just about to say I'd probably fold ace 6. Now you. I was actually kind of setting you up. I'm like, I'm going to tell you I fold ace 6. Now you can call me a nit.
You seriously, Joe, you can't fold a face card when you get 5 to 1. You got a face.
There's
card.
no face on an ace.
I mean, it's better than a face card.
So you either call like jack deuce off.
No. I'm just kidding.
I see.
Jack. Yes, I'm sorry about that, but yeah, I mean, obviously folding jack deuce offsuit in that spot. Yeah.
But honestly, what is your? Let's say you're unknown. Both of these players are unknown. What's your calling range? I guess it's really wide, but
yeah, in a 10-20 game, any ace, most kings, a lot of queens, any suited hand, of course, that goes without saying, and any pocket pair also goes without saying. I'm also not folding 5-4 offsuit, 7-5 offsuit, 9-6 offsuit, 10-7 offsuit, Jack 8 offsuit, Queen 8 offsuit, King 5 offsuit, Ace deuce offsuit is probably my range. So I think that's probably something like top 65%. Well, not top 65%, but around 65%, right? If I should guess. 70%. Is that too low?
No, it sounds about the same range that I talked to.
That sounds okay to me.
Yeah, I talk to Michael Schneider on a fairly frequent basis, especially when I was playing a ton of Limit Hold'em. I basically just bug him that the Red Sox beat the Twins all the time. But I do talk to him about ranges like this, and he pretty much pegged his range to the T.
Yeah,
exactly how he thinks about it. So
I don't want to I don't want to promote a competing site, but Mike Schneider, I mean, if you do what he does, you're probably going to be doing pretty well.
Yeah. No. I mean, Mike's a good friend of mine, so
yeah.
I definitely all props to learning a ton from him, as well as Death Donkey, and now you. So so we have Ace 5, and we flop an Ace, and it's semi-drawn up, and we're bet into by the small blind who called pre-flop. I guess this is one of those spots where now you have your Ace 5 offsuit and you're out of position and the pot is bloated and it's multi-way, and now Peter, take it over.
I would if I could see the flop.
It's just Ace 8 10 with the Ace 8 of hearts.
I definitely raise here.
Really?
Yeah. We have top pair, right? Okay, now I can see it. Yeah, I'm definitely raising here. I mean, we can get hands like King Queen, King Jack, Queen Jack to fold, Queen 9 to fold, King 9. Okay, King 9, we don't want to fold King 9. 7-6, we can fold hands like that to fold behind us. And the donker, in my experience, has some kind of a pair or some kind of a draw, which obviously isn't that surprising, but I think we will be getting a heads up against a flush draw or a straight draw or a worse pair with some probability. So I am, definitely raising here.
Okay. I'll be honest. I get a little lost, and there's definitely times I call. I never fold. You can be assured of that. There are times I raise, but every time I feel like I raise, I always feel like it's the wrong spot. But Thomas does call here, and the button behind us calls, which I'm going to say calling's not too bad. It can't be that wrong, can it, Peter?
I don't think that's wrong because, I mean, make it a rainbow board and change the 8 to a 5. And
now we have 2 pair.
Oh yeah, so then we have so change it to a 4, a deuce or something like that, and the 10 to a 9. Then I think calling is clearly superior because then there's not a lot of hands that we really want to try to fold behind us, and we would like him to make a bad overcall. Not a bad overcall, but a bad overcall from a fundamental theorem of poker point of view with the kings or queens or jacks or, a second pair, stuff like that. So, I mean, if it was a really dry flop, then I think calling is fine. I just think that there's too many gut shots out there now that we can get to fold. And if we face the gut shot, if we just call, we face a gut shot with 8 to 1 and with the implied odds that it's going to get because we're never going to fold top pair later on. It certainly has odds to peel with Queen Jack, yeah. And I want to get those out. I mean, even better if we can get Queen Jack with a backdoor flush draw route. Even better, right? So, yes. To be honest, I think the flop is a pretty easy race.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and moving along, the turn is the deuce of hearts, which puts the flush out there. And the small blind still leads. And we've got that one player to act behind us. Now where do we stand, Peter?
We pretty much hate life because, I mean, we're probably ahead of the guy behind us. If he had a better race, something like that, he probably would have raised. So we shouldn't worry about that guy. And he may also have raised a flush draw in position, trying to take a free card or something like that. So I don't think he has a flush that often either. But the guy who dunked is going to have a flush a fair amount. And the problem with him having a flush is that every time he has a flush, we're drunk dead. And I mean, as you all know, that's like the cardinal sin of poker. That's putting in bets when you're drunk dead, right? So, I mean, I'm never folding, but I'm definitely not raising now either.
No.
Okay, go
Go
on.
ahead, Thomas.
No, go on. Yes.
It's okay. Thomas raised here.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Thomas, even I'm not raising there. And there's actually times I might fall. Granted, the deuce of hearts came off, so I'm going to call here. But like, put the jack of hearts out and a couple of combinations that fill in the rest of the draws. I'm probably even leaning more towards a fold than I would a raise. So
I think that would be slightly too tight, but I don't think it's awful in any way. And I think
it can't be awful.
No, and if you get raised behind you, I think the good news, if you just call that, then if you get raised behind you, then you have a really easy fold. But of course, it costs you a big bit to figure it out, to find out. But yeah, I mean, it's not the. I mean, the jack of hearts would be really awful, or the king of hearts would be really awful here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he does raise, and the button folds, and your opponent folded.
He had a gut shot, no heart.
He had to.
No heart, yeah.
Or he had a 10. That's some weird, stupid hand.
Yeah, an 8 on no heart, with no heart in it. Yeah.
Okay,
actually.
Thomas.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm kind of amazed. That was pretty interesting spot, but I still don't like the turn raise. So, but any last comments on the hand, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, actually thinking about it, just calling this flop and then raising a more safe turn, say the deuce of clubs or something like that. Yeah, that may not be a terrible way to play this. So Joe, if you call this flop, do you ever raise a blank?
There are definitely times I have, but I gotta have pretty good reads. Okay. I'm kind of just like there's definitely times I have. Most definitely. Like if I look at the 3 of, diamonds there on the turn instead of, there's definitely times I've raised here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I kind of like the way you broke down the flop, and I think I like your line. I think you like your raising line better the way you broke that down. So, but yeah, pretty interesting spot. And I'm kind of amazed that you didn't. There was no river here. So,
yeah, me too.
So, I have time enough for one more hand, guys. So let's try to blast through this. So we get an open limper. I think the hand history is a little messed up here. I assume the guy open limped on the button here.
Yeah.
And the small blind completes, and we check with 9 deuce offsuit, and we flop a deuce on a 2, 3, 10 2 heart board, and we have the 9 of hearts. And you flop the pair on a dry board, so this is limit hold'em, so you flop the nuts. And it is checked to you. I would definitely bet here 100% of the time.
Oops.
And am I out of line, Peter?
I check 100%, but I find this. No, I don't check 100%, but okay. I do find that people that open limp will bet a lot when checked in this spot. So it's kind of like they kind of like make it continuation bet as the open limper. So they bet like 6-5 offsuit here, whatever they open limped with, or queen 7 suited. And I do like to take advantage of that. So in this spot, I mean, had I been the small blind and somehow misclicked and completed 9 deuce offsuit, I would definitely have checked and try to go for a check raise. In this spot, though, when you're the big blind, I think betting is a little bit better, but I still do check unless I have a read that he's not going to make that fake continuation bet.
That's a really interesting point, because you're totally right. They do. It is sort of a continuation bet. It's like they were the one. Yeah, it is. I totally agree. That's a pretty interesting way of putting it. That's a very Joel Tall like way of putting it. he does check through, and the turn is a 10 of hearts, and now the small blind leads out.
Mm.
How do we stand now? And obviously, here's one thing: is that this pot's really small now. So, but we did pick up the flush draw.
Yeah. So folding is out of the question. We have Crabland beat the open limber pretty often, right? I mean, we need to assume that he would bet a 10, a 3, a deuce, or a flush draw on the flop. I mean, he could be slow playing. Pair. Yeah, or a pocket pair, yeah. He could be slow playing something like a flop set, maybe. I don't know. I mean, you'll sometimes see that. But we need to assume that we have him beat. And since Liam didn't bet the flop either, I think it's fairly likely that we have the best hand here. He may have a 3, Liam. He may have something like a pair of 4s. He may have a flush. But more often than not, he's taken a stab with absolutely nothing, or he has some flush draw. And,
so we're not folding.
No, never.
So I actually would advocate a call here.
Yeah, me too. I think raising actually would be even worse maybe than folding. So as you said, the pot is really small. The pot is really okay. So let me try and explain. The pot is really small here. It's 1.5 big bet after he bets, right? No, 2.5 big bets. And I mean, we don't care about the guy behind us. We can't really make him fold something for 2 that he would call for 1 because we have that flush draw, and he probably doesn't have much of anything. He likely won't have a lot of outs, and if he only has something like 4 outs, then we're actually fine with him making that call because he would be getting 3.5 to 1 with 4 rounds, so he'd be making a bad call when we do have the best hand. And obviously, there's also the slight chance here that we don't have the best hand. Another thing is that the third guy is probably going to fold a lot. Crabland is going to fold a lot. Whether we raise or call, he's probably going to fold a lot and not make an overcall that often. And when Liam, the better now, when he has something like Queen 7 offsuit with no heart, he's not going to call a raise. He's not going to 3-bet either. He's just going to let it go. But if we had just called and get it heads up to the river, and the river breaks off with something ridiculous, then he's probably going to fire again. And that's just huge. When you can get these bad players to make plays at tiny pots, that's just huge EV-wise. In a big pot, I'm all for raising here to try and win it because then it's a big pot. So, I mean, if we want to make one more 2+2 saying, I think it's Mars Dyson who says it, but I'm not sure, that if in tiny pots, you want to make the other guys put in bets. In big pots, you want to make the other guys fold. And this is a tiny pot. We want them to put in bets. Yeah. So having Liam make a river bet with Queen 7 offsuit is just so huge because that's a whole big bet. But if you just take down the pot now, that's just 2.5 big bets. So yeah, I think calling is by far the best play here.
I agree with Peter, but Thomas does elect to raise here, and his opponent folds.
Yeah, and I think so. He probably had Queen 7 exactly.
I see. Let me explain that. I thought at that very moment that I know you guys hate the free showdown raise, but I thought that this was just about a perfect situation for a free showdown raise. I want the other guy out, and like when I'm drawing to a hard draw. I can also like put in another bet on the river and get called by worse hands, sometimes by better. So I was kind of messed up, but at that moment I thought raising and probably checking behind unimproved was correct. But now I accept your points that it's a small pot and calling is superior.
Yeah, I think. This is a weird one, but you probably missed a bet on the river because your opponent probably would have barreled again, especially if like a 4 of diamonds comes off, and he's like, well, he picked up the flush draw, now he missed it, and I've got a bluff bet again. So oddly enough, you missed value on your pair of deuces here with your 9 kicker. but value by your opponent bluffing again on the river, like Peter
I
said.
see.
So, and another note is that like if the opponent behind you, if he picked up any sort of flush draw, it's likely there's a semi-decent chance it could be better than yours, and he's never folding a hand like that. So, it's one of those things. So we probably haven't beat here, but he could have a better draw, a better draw that he's not folding. So, it's a pretty interesting spot, but I definitely am 100% about the call. Mm-hmm. So, any last comments, guys?
I just want to say, so Thomas mentioned that if he raises here, then he can put in that one more bet on the river, and then it was kind of a value raise when he hits his flush. But I do want to say that you could also just call, and then if he fires the river, say it's the ace of hearts or whatever, and he fires again, then you could make a value raise there. I think a thin value raise, so you could get that bet in. Yeah. Still, you don't have to raise the turn to get 3 bets in on the big street. You can still get in 2 bets on the river. And also, so you talked about a free showdown raise. Change the turn to the 10 of diamonds or 10 of clubs or whatever. Then I actually agree with you. Then I don't think a free showdown raise is that bad here, because then it's kind of the same spot I was talking about earlier with an underpair on a paired board, because then we can actually get hands that has a lot of outs to fold. And if we do get, say we could see the cards and we could see the guy behind us had king 5 and Liam had queen 7, then they have tons of outs against us. And then getting both of them to fold is actually not that bad, even though the pot is just 2.5 big bets. But it would be 3.5 big bet if we call. So getting a combined, they would have 18 outs combined or something like that. Getting a combined 18 outs in a 3.5 big bet pot, that's not too shabby. So, yeah. So then it would have more merit. I'm still not sure I'm doing it because the pot is still so tiny. But yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. I have time for one more hand.
Let's do it.
We open raise king 10 offsuit in the cutoff here and get 3-bet by Quaxi on the button here. Thomas, you read on Quaxi?
Yeah. He's 38/24/1.6, and he seemed really solid. So he's kind of a strong player.
Okay. You probably recognize you the same, so doesn't necessarily give him the nuts on the button here. But it folds to the big blind who caps it here. And it's on to us. Peter, are we just pitching this hand?
This spot is just this is a spot that's been debated a lot on 2+2. Mm-hmm. I don't fold anything suited here, and I don't fold a pair. I do fold some offsuit hands. I do know that I got a lot of good players would fold here, and I do know a lot of good players that would call. I do know some good players that's going to say, I have 2 face cards. Well, the 10 and not a face card, but close enough, so I can make top pairs, and I'm never ever folding here. I think in today's games, where Quaxi probably has something like, I don't know, top 25% maybe that's his 3-betting range, and if the big blind is a good player that realizes that, then he could easily be carrying something like Jack 10 suited, or pair of 7s, or pair of 6s, pair of 5s. He could easily have a wide range as well. Okay. Also, if he suspects that we will fold to a cap, then he should cap really light, actually. So I don't fold, but there's no way that I can prove, and I'm not sure that it's a plus EV call. And as I said, I know some mighty good players that fold here.
I'm going to say it. I failed to ask what your read on Andreas Spoon or whatever Andreas up there is. It kind of. If you got. If he's a passive type player, or you've seen him do fairly tight standard stuff, I have no problem getting out of the way here. You have like the exact hand that Peter has already alluded to that's been debated. Like it's the exact spot. It's one of those. I'm gonna chalk it up to how much variance do you want to absorb today type thing.
Wow.
So I don't mind folding here, and there's definitely times I have called. I'm 100% with Peter, never folding a pair, never folding anything suited, never folding an ace. But the king 10
I
offsuit.
disagree with that.
I might fold some of my crappy aces, but then I also don't
fold
open
offsuit
like
aces.
I'm
Ace
not
seven
folding ace. Yeah, I was about to say I'm not folding ace 8. So I definitely fold some of my smaller aces. I definitely fold ace 6 and ace 7. But the king 10, that's like the exact spot. So I'm gonna leave it up to the game dynamic. Let it dictate the situation.
Okay, just one more thing.
Go ahead.
You asked me for a read. You kind of asked me for a read on Andreas PS son. He just sat down, so that was the first session we played, but he seemed really loose passive in general. He made some weird calls, especially pre-flop. He was playing some crappy hands for a call, and he almost never raised without a premium hand. So how does that change your ranges?
I think folding is okay, and then, but the thing is, if we could see his cards and he had pair of aces, then I'm still calling king 10 suited here. I think that's profitable, but I'm not sure. I'm definitely still calling a pair because when we hit a set, we're just gonna make so many bets off it, right? But I think something like king 10 offsuit, I think that's good. That's gonna go to the muck if his range is something like jacks are better than ace king, right? So if he's capping really tight, really old school full ring tight, then I think a lot of offsuit hands should go to the muck. But I do still believe that we should call suited hands and pairs to make that big. I mean, at least suited connectors to make that big hand and then win a lot of bets against a guy who's probably not capable of slowing down with aces or kings when he should slow down.
Yeah, I agree. So you elected to fold here, and I said it's fine with that. We can run out the hand. Oh, it's just a bet fold. The thing about like, I'm gonna chalk it up to pure table dynamic, but I'm gonna have to wrap it up here, guys, because I gotta run. So, but thank you very much for joining us, Peter. I should work with you more often now that I'm getting back into the limit hold'em. So. And Thomas, I hope you enjoyed the program.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I learned a lot. Thank you guys for doing this.
No problem.
I learned a lot too. So thank you very much. And this is Joe Tall signing off for deucescrack.com, and we will see you on the forums.